Okay, it's 5 PM. I'll call to order the Village Board of Oregon. Excuse me. Monday, September 15th, 2025. I would ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Higgins.
Here.
Kirchdorfer.
Here.
Knipfer.
Here.
Marks.
Here.
McDaniel.
Here.
Peterson.
Here.
And Van Campen.
Here. Item 3, approval of September 2nd, 2025 Village Board meeting minutes if correct and correction of mistakes, if any. Tom and Paige. Questions, comments, corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Pardon me. Item 4, public appearances, comments, and communications. Items for discussion and/or possible action. A, official oath of office and swearing in for police officers Anna Roque, Natalie DeGran, and Isaiah Jones. Yeah, Chief, if you'd
Thank you. I will just talk briefly. We have 3 to swear in, and I'm actually going to do them individually because this is a very monumental moment. I remember like it was yesterday when I was sworn in. Much less gray hair, but I certainly remember like it was yesterday. Obviously, I've talked with all of you about our hiring process. It is a very long one, and we are very diligent about finding individuals that will treat our community well in a moment of crisis, whether it be a lost dog to a lost family member. If we do not find that person, we start over till we find the right person. And I can tell you the 3 that are sitting in front of you, in the front row there, looking very nervous, certainly fit that criteria. I will say Anna came from the Walworth County Sheriff's Office, Corrections. She is one of 2 we've since picked up from their department. Isaiah Jones came from Evansville Public Works. And my brother, he was mentioning becoming a cop, and my brother said, you know, maybe you should give my sister's department a shot, but she will not be easy on you. So happy to have him. And then, of course, Natalie, she came from the private sector, and it's just been a fantastic addition as well. All 3 went through the Police Recruit Academy, sponsored by the Village of Oregon, because I really truly feel that there's a lot of benefit in investing in people and setting them up for a successful career. So we sent them through the Dane County Sheriff Office's Recruitment Academy. We found this academy to be great. When they come out, they perform exceptionally well. All the academies do a great job, but I will say, as far as throughout my career, I've worked with several of the instructors, and there's nobody else I would want training somebody that's going to be my backup than those individuals. So they all did very well. They were very supportive of one another. There's a lot of benefit when we're able to send officers together because they form that bond. And trust me, they test you in that academy day 1 all the way till the end. So to overcome that together is really just an added bonus. I attended the graduation. They all did, again, exceptionally well. And in fact, Anna got an award. I believe there were only 5 given out to the entire academy class. I think it was about 25, 30, and she got one for communications, exceptional communication skills. So again, very happy to see them join our team. You know, it's no secret, as soon as they got out of the academy, we got them right into field training. I've heard nothing but positive remarks from their FTOs about how they're doing, how hardworking they are, and how fast they're picking up the job. And so that's a little bit of background with them. Yes, they already are on the road. Isaiah is on day shift with Officer Gilbertson. Natalie is with Sergeant Elsner, my FTO when I started here, so she's in good hands. And Anna is with Sergeant Colson, who's in the back. Oh, there he is. He's in the front there. So they're learning quickly. We've been very busy, so they've been able to experience a lot of calls right out of the gate. Before I go any further, I did prepare a small speech that I just wanted to read to capture how important this moment is. And I know we've sat through some swearing-ins, and sometimes we can become, I wouldn't say numb to it, but it can become an everyday thing. And we don't want it. Number one, we don't want that. but two, we really do want to recognize how important this is. So thank you for all being here. Today marks a milestone for the newly hired officers standing before us, for this department, and for the families who have stood behind them every step of the way. To our new officers, congratulations. You've earned your place here through hard work, discipline, and determination. You've chosen a path that demands courage, integrity, and commitment. And today, as you take your oath, you formally join a profession built on sacrifice and service. That oath is more than words. It is a solemn promise. A promise to serve your community with honor, a promise to protect others, even when it puts you at risk, a promise to act with fairness, humility, and strength, a promise to represent this badge, not just in uniform, but in character. Wearing the badge means much more than enforcing the law. It means being the one people call when they are afraid, when they're hurting, and when they don't know who else to turn to. You will be expected to make decisions in an instant, to lead with calm in chaos, and to hold yourselves to the highest standards every single day. But you don't walk this path alone. To the families and loved ones here today, this moment belongs to you as well. Behind every officer is a support system that makes this calling possible. You carry the quiet burden that comes with loving someone who runs towards danger. You miss holidays, answer late night texts, and hold your breath through every shift. You too are making a commitment, and we thank you deeply for it. We recognize that when we swear in a new officer, we are also asking something of their family: patience, understanding, and support in the face of a demanding and often unpredictable profession. We don't take that lightly, and we are grateful. To our new officers, as you take your oath, remember who you're doing this for the people of this community, for the profession you now represent, for the teammates who will rely on you, and for the families who believe in you. This is the beginning of a journey that will test you, shape you, and reward you in ways you cannot imagine. You will grow, you will be challenged, and you will make a difference. We are proud to welcome you to this department and to welcome your families into ours. Serve with pride, lead with integrity, and never forget the meaning of the badge. So I will have Officer Roque come on up first. Okay. Tyler, you want to come on up? So something new we're doing this time is we're going to have the loved one put the badge on the uniform.
Cool.
As a symbol of how important it is, that support. Okay? So after I read the oath and she says, repeats it all after me, turn to you and you can put the badge on. Okay? Excellent. So just to make it easier on you, I'll get you a copy of it. So, all right. So repeat after me. All right, after you raise your right hand here. All right. I, Anna V. Roque, do solemnly swear that I will support and comply with the Constitution of the United States of America.
I, Anna Victoria Roque, do solemnly swear that I will support and comply with the Constitution of the United States of America,
The Constitution and laws of the state of Wisconsin, the charter, laws, and ordinances of the Village of Oregon,
the Constitution and the laws of the United States, the state of Wisconsin, the charter, laws, and ordinance of the Village of Oregon,
the rules and regulations of the Village of Oregon Police Department, and the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics,
the rules and regulations of the Village of Oregon Police Department, and the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as a sworn officer of the Oregon Police Department. I will assume my duties as of March 19th, 2025.
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as a sworn officer of the Oregon Police Department. I assume my duties as of March 19th.
I guess his hand is shaking right now.
Did you practice this at home? to you.
Absolutely, I like it. Thank you.
I'll try not to push the microphone over you. Natalie, if you could raise your right hand for me and repeat. I, Natalie M. Negron, do solemnly swear that I will support and comply with the Constitution of the United States of America,
I, Natalie M. Negron, do solemnly swear that I will support and comply with the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Wisconsin, the charter, laws, and ordinances of the Village of Oregon,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Wisconsin, the charter, laws, and ordinances of the Village of Oregon,
the rules and regulations of the Village of Oregon Police Department, and the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics,
the rules and regulations of the Village of Oregon Police Department, and the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics.
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as a sworn officer of the Oregon Police Department. I will assume my duties as of March 19th, 2025.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as a sworn officer of the Oregon Police Department. I will assume my duties as of March 19th, 2025.
No, no.
Natalie, congratulations and welcome.
And Isaiah. Save your best for last. Thank you. All right. Okay, Isaiah, I'll have you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Isaiah Jones, do solemnly swear that I will support and comply with the with the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution and laws of the state of Wisconsin,
I, Isaiah R. Jones, do solemnly swear that I will support and comply with the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution and the laws of the state of Wisconsin, the charter, laws, and ordinances of the Village of Oregon,
the rules and regulations of the Village of Oregon Police Department, and the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics,
the rules and regulations of the Village of Oregon Police Department, and the law enforcement code of ethics,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as a sworn officer of the Oregon Police Department. I will assume my duties as of March 19th, 2025.
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as a sworn officer of the Oregon Police Department. I will assume my duties as of March 19th, 2025. I felt it.
Mom of an officer. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That it?
Thank you, Phil.
Yep, thank you. Okay. Let's see, item 4B, presentation from Village Municipal Financial Advisor Ellers regarding the 2025 financial management plan update. And I see Brian is here. Oh,
Four B. Four B.
we're switching D, and then we're gonna do B. Eight.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, thank you for checking with me.
All right, thank you all for having me here tonight. We're going to go through the governmental funds, the capital improvement plan, tax increment districts, and the utilities all in one. So a lot of this in terms of the packet material is supposed to be kind of the takeaway. So some of the slides, we're gonna go a little bit faster than others as it's intended for reference material to provide the documentation of the projections, et cetera. So at any time, just stop me if you have a question on something and we can kind of work through those items. So we'll start with the governmental section and go straight into the next slide, which is the Moody's AA2 rating annual comment. So each time you go for a financing, you get the opinion of a rating agency. The village has typically used Moody's here, and this is kind of from the report that they provided as part of your 2025 B financing, and some of the highlights were your liquidity ratio in terms of where your fund balance and cash is above AA medians. We'll kind of get into more detail in a second on that. Growth metric trending above AA medians, and then your leverage. So how much debt you have as compared to kind of total assets, total revenues, things like that. So we'll kind of dive in as to why these are important and kind of what's driving these. So in terms of what's driving them, looking at the financial policies, you kind of self-limit yourselves to make sure that you're meeting some of these criteria. So the first one would be the unassigned fund balance should be between 25% and 35% of expenditures. And then anytime you're above that amount, you know, in terms of a good budget year, for example, and you're producing fund balance, you're using that, shifting it towards capital or special projects each year as an appropriation. And then the other part of that fund balance policy is that if you do dip below it for some sort of special need, that you restore it back to those levels pretty quickly. The other one is your debt policy, and that is you're going to basically have 3/4 of your total capacity, so you're not going to go above 75% of the statutorily allowed debt capacity. The other thing that I think is important that I did want to add this year is kind of the structure part of your policy, and that's making sure that when you're looking at structuring debt, and kind of the whole purpose of this long-term financial plan is to not only look at current upcoming debt issues like for 2026, but looking beyond that, we can start to structure debt issues that are 5 years from now, right? So you're always creating levy capacity as much as we can within the plan, and then adjusting when we get to the time of execution. So the next slide's a little bit of a historical perspective on where you've been with fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. So there's different categories of fund balance here, but the main one to pay attention to is kind of unassigned fund balance. Kind of think of that as free cash flow for those in, you know, operating private businesses. But here, looking at your unassigned fund balance, basically what's our rainy day fund or our emergency fund, you've been between about 30 and 32%. So while that looks like a very negative trend, that's only within 2 percentage points. So I would, you know, call that more or less, if we up the lower limit of that chart, it'd look a lot prettier and kind of flat. But I'll just say there that you're in a good position, well within your policy there. Then on the kind of jumping beyond the Moody's criteria and going into kind of building the budgets, we always kind of like to reiterate in terms of how the sausage is made. And, you know, you build your budget needs, all right? The administrators working with department heads to figure out what sort of expenditures are needed. We look at non-levy revenue sources generally being conservative and keeping those flat outside of any sort of known trend that we feel, should be implemented, or certain adjustments. So the one there was a couple of years ago, Act 12 injected the county municipal aid, so you had extra non-levy revenue for the first time in a while. So in instances like that, we would inject it into the analysis, but that said, it's not like we're saying, well, in 2 years, we're gonna get this wild legislative update that'll help all local municipalities. So just note, we're not injecting any unrealistic expectations there, and then we take that X minus Y, or expenses minus our non-levy revenues, to say how much levy do we need, and we kind of weigh that against your allowable levy. So as you may know, in the state of Wisconsin, you're limited to net new construction, that percentage added to whatever you levied last year. And so for this year, for this upcoming budget, you do have an allowable increase to the levy of about $242,000. Then looking at the levy needs, this is comparing the 25 budget to 26 draft budget here by category. So the general fund, the library fund, debt service for the tax increment districts, and then your debt service that's existing. So this is inclusive of the 2025 borrowing as well. So part of the reason that the total levy is going up is the new debt service from the 2025 borrowing. As you can see, go from about 3.3 million to 3.8 million there, as well as, right, there's an increase in the general fund and a smaller increase for the library fund as well. So, but overall, kind of a 8% increase in terms of total levied funds. Speaking to, now we know that levy need amount, we're kind of talking about that now, knowing our allowable levy limit. This I wanted to keep in the slides just to kind of reiterate how levy limits work. We do 2-hour presentations, riveting presentations I should add, about levy limits, where we're going line by line on the lovely levy limit worksheet. So that checkpoint in terms of subject to numerous adjustments. There is long presentations on the matter. I know we do one in Wanakee, is probably the closest one here, that is free for anybody to attend. Both elected officials and municipal staff often attend those. So if you want to learn more about that or find 2 hours to fall asleep, welcome to go through that effort. But the simplest way I explain it, if I was to get 10 seconds on it, is just say, what did we do last year net of debt? Because debt gets subtracted out. Then you add that net new construction percentage. That builds your base allowable levy, or what we call your pre-adjustment levy. That is probably the most important number to all municipalities, is that's kind of like what can we do within our operating confines in terms of what sort of operating expenditures do we have. Because we can issue debt and do whatever we want with that. Obviously, we can only have a certain amount outstanding, but you can literally have a debt payment go up by $5 million. Now, that wouldn't do well with the tax bill, of course, but you can structure your debt to have a much higher debt payment and claim that if you need it. Now, that said, we don't want to do that, as I mentioned, for the structure part in terms of structuring your debt service. But just note, you can claim whatever you need for debt, so that's why we say the base levy, not total levy, is the more important number. And there, when we're talking through the allowable levy in terms of your levy components, and we kind of talk through this, you have the general fund and the library fund. The point of this slide is they're subject to levy limits and do not have those exemptions like the debt service fund does, where you can, there's no line on that worksheet that says, oh, your library needs a little bit of extra money this year. You can claim that and adjust your levy to whatever you need. Those are both subject to the net new construction percentage, and then the debt service is not. You can kind of claim what you need there. Some history on the next slide in terms of that all-important net new construction. Been at about over 2% for the last 8 or so years, and more importantly, over the last couple of years, kind of increasing to 3% more consistently with your 2025 number being 3.89%. So that's where we get that 242,000 that you can add to the levy for your 2026 budget. So again, more or less showing the buying power of your net new construction. This is kind of a summary slide in terms of what the levy limit worksheet kind of looks like, and where the village has gone with that. The one thing I just kind of wanted to keep this slide in is number one, kind of seeing what that levy limit before adjustments line looks like. So that's that middle line on this chart from last year to this year. The other point of it is you're not only including the claim for debt service, but you also are claiming what's called line I, or the charges assessed by a joint fire department. So anytime a fire department doesn't increase their individual budget by more than CPI plus 2% in terms of what they're charging their municipalities that are part of that joint fire department, you can claim whatever you need for that amount. So we just kind of wanted to show that in terms of you're not just doing the debt adjustment, but if the fire department budget is under control, under that statutory requirement, you can claim that, and the intent is to do so. So then kind of going into beyond the 2026 budget, we wanted to provide just a little bit of historical perspective in terms of valuations, and this is on an equalized basis here. So on average, you've had about 10% of total equalized value growth, and new construction at about 3%. For the purposes of this presentation going beyond the 2026 budget, we've just assumed a net new construction amount of about 2%. And again, that's kind of the low threshold in terms of that bigger chart that I showed of the last 8 years. I do have some communities that'll say, show it to us with 1% net new construction, or show it to us with 0 net new construction. Just knowing how important that number is, if you just happen that buildings are taking a while, or the permits aren't pulled in time, things like that, and you just have one bad year, you do kind of want to be prepared for that. So that's definitely why we go on the lower threshold, and we're not going to say, hey, it's a trend analysis, we've been crushing it over 3%, now let's go to 4% and project it out that way. We'd rather be a little conservative, maybe stress test the financial performance in the future to kind of see what would be the resultant factor. So then looking at solving for the levy need in the future, this is our expenditure methodology. So we're typically kind of taking historical trends, staff input. This has been what's been in the model for the past couple of years, so no real new items there. But in terms of predicting 2027 budget and beyond, we've assigned cost categories to your line item expenditures and done a linear trend there. So then what does that look like into the future? I know this is a very busy slide, but looking at just kind of revenues against expenditures and looking at that in total, what we're basically saying is we can't increase property taxes above that plus 2% net new construction there in terms of what's funding the general fund. So we're gonna, keep that where it can be. We're gonna keep the non-levy revenues generally flat outside of any changes that we might be inputting into the model. But here you can kind of see for most of the cost, or most of the revenue categories, flat outside of the intergovernmental. And then saying, all right, with those linear expenditure trends, where would we be? So for example, only 2% net new construction might yield kind of a 174,000, if you see that net change in blue, deficit. Now, if we got to the 2027 budget and actually we're seeing that, hey, we are limited by net new construction, you would still have the authority to claim debt service levy for your abated sources of debt if you wanted to. So it's not to say that you're immediately in a deficit, all other things being equal. It's just to kind of show what the potential pitfalls would be at like 2% net new construction against the expenditure trends, if that makes sense. I know a lot of this has, in the past kind of led to discussions in terms of, what do we do with increasing pressures in terms of expenditures, which all municipalities are going through, thoughts on referendum, thoughts on, what do we do with our individual services, and items like that. So this is not intended to say that there's action needed from it. It's more to show, hey, if we start to have the lowest net new construction that we've had in the past 8 years, we may have some tougher decisions versus some of these other years where we've had like 3.8% net new construction, for example. So that all said, definitely solvable with the allowable debt service levy claim, and would not yield kind of a negative or a deficit budgetarily. And then the next slide just kind of continues that, but I'll just say it only accentuates itself, right? If I only go 2% with revenues, 7% with expenditures, you can obviously understand that that would grow on itself over time. So next we'll jump into capital, but before I do, any questions on kind of the operating side of things? Okay. So looking at capital, this is kind of the full CIP sources of funding. Then we have debt issue broken down by debt issue, and then broken down by debt repayment type. So we have about 184.6 million of total in terms of capital projects. The full detailed list, which you might need a microscope for. I was trying to make that as big as possible in Appendix C, but it's a long list and 10 years of projects. That's in Appendix C at the end of this document. But in terms of how much of that are we funding with debt, it is about 166.7 million. Some of this is obviously dictated by the utilities, which are about just over 50 million of that, and then the sewer treatment plant on its own and upgrades there through the Clean Water Fund Loan Program, about 20 million of that 166, so 70 million in total dedicated to the utilities, about 94 million for the levy purposes and general obligation notes, part of that as well as TID 5. So on the next slide, looking at the existing general obligation debt, one thing I just kind of lead your eyes to is this is chronologically top to bottom, left to right. What we're really looking at is total general obligation debt payments, and then general obligation debt expenses, and then we net out any abatement sources. So what I mean there is other revenue sources that can pay towards this debt service, and this is all existing debt inclusive of the 2025 borrowing. And then if you go about 3/4 to the right, you're looking at your net tax levy there. So again, kind of the important element is we do try to build in future debt capacity, right, depending on the size of the issue and the amount of new interest expense. It can be hard to obviously predict where the market will go and what the needs will be at that time if project costs increase, et cetera. But just know generally a flat or decreasing levy is kind of the current structure. And then we look to structure in the new debt service for 2026 and beyond in there. So that's kind of the goal of this slide, is just show you where you sit now with all your existing debt. Next slide is looking at kind of building for the future. And there, I know you've had some discussions on this already, so probably have seen this. But in terms of those new projects, right, about 90 million of general obligation debt service in the next 10 years. Understandable that that'll obviously have an impact over time. So I would just lead your eyes about 3/4 of the way to the right again. And that levy change from prior years, probably the most important, where we've tried to be as intentional as possible to have that be generally flat in terms of the increase, wherein when we then convert that to the impact on a tax bill, it's about $100 on average, kind of going from 2027 through 2036, which is the rightmost column. If you see the change to tax bill column there, kind of that new impact on debt is about $100 a year, if that makes sense. In terms of borrowing capacity there, the existing debt is on the left-hand side. The added debt for the proposed plan, 26 and beyond, is on the right-hand side. There, again, your statutory debt limit is 5% of your total equalized value. You have that self-limit of 75% of that threshold. So those are both depicted there. You're at about 40% of the statutory limit currently and 54% of your goal limit there. And then kind of building into the future, you can see in the kind of dark shaded areas, the most important one with our self-imposed limit, where we go with some of the bigger projects. You have some legacy projects, fire facilities and others in there. 2035 kind of being the max year with only about 1.4 million of remaining capacity there. So again, and this is a fluid plan as you move your capital improvements in the future. But again, all other things being equal, you can still fit this 10-year plan within your own goal limits. Putting it all together in terms of those levy needs discussed for the general fund and the operating funds on the previous section, and now the capital section with the added debt service. You can kind of see in terms of total levied funds, about a 7 to 5% change for the first couple of years, and then 4% change beyond that. However, the one thing I'll mention is we are limiting right to the 2% of net new construction relative to the general fund items there. So if you did have higher net new construction and the budget expectations were true to this plan, right, you'd probably have a little bit higher impact in terms of total levy, closer to something like you're seeing for the 2026 budget. So I'll just kind of mention that as this actually looks prettier only because we're limiting the net new construction to 2%, therefore limiting the amount we're levying for the general fund. But that said, all other things being equal, we then show how that impacts kind of the tax rate on a equalized value TID out, going from about $5.17 tax rate to about $6 and then $6.50 by plan year 10 there. And then in terms of sample property value on an equalized basis, they're currently at about 539,000 and then growing as the value grows in terms of on an equalized basis. We're looking at tax bill changes relatively equal to the impact in terms of total change in levy. Now, the one other thing that I'd mention there is that can get impacted in terms of true tax bill is done on an assessed value TID out basis. And then when you would have a reval, right, you can kind of have some fluctuations there in terms of not only increased, taxable value on an individual property, but added value to the village as a whole in taxable value when those happen. So you can sometimes see that, go up and down in terms of the tax rate goes down, but the tax bill is actually relatively flat there, depending on how the revals shake out. So this is done on an equalized basis for this purpose. And then this is just a graphical representation on the previous slide, kind of showing the trend line in terms of total levy and the tax rate, and then the percentages are that change year over year in terms of those impacts. And then this is a graphical representation on the next slide. Yeah, levy components showing, what kind of makes up our levy there. Understandably, the debt service kind of would grow to be a larger function of total levy, only because we're self-limiting to the 2% on the operating side, as mentioned with net new construction assumption. And on the debt side, we don't have that limiting factor. We're just kind of levying for that level impact of about $100 a year to the tax bill. So, and then this slide just kind of identifies right now for the 2026 budget, right, debt service is about 37% of the levy, And you can see it by 2035, all other things being equal, it's about 50% of the tax levy, as I just tried to illustrate on the previous slide, but obviously stands to reason, understanding we're limiting one side of the equation and the other side limiting a little bit less in terms of debt service against the operating funds. So for some TID updates, we have the full reports that will be presented to the Joint Review Board Wednesday morning. I believe that's 8 a.m. On Wednesday morning. But to kind of do a quick recap there, TID 3, Blight District created in '05. The year-end fund balance is about $23,000, and the expected closure is about 2039 with the updated cash flow analysis that you could find in Appendix D, with the original expected closure being 2032. TID 4 is a rehab district created in '08. That is that fund balance is currently about 480,000 with an expected closure of 2040 based off the updated cash flow and original expected closure 2034. TID 5, another rehab district created in 2017. Since it's a newer TID, right, still kind of climbing out of the hole as typical with tax increment financing. We have a 24-year-end fund balance of negative 136,000, but an expected closure earlier than the prior two TIDs of about 2033. There's been a lot of action going on in those districts with a lot of increased incremental value now and ongoing. So that's actually showing that it'll perform better than originally expected. And then TID 6 is the mixed use district created in 2023. Similarly, still has a negative fund balance like TID 5 with an expected closure of about 2042, right? Still pretty new TID, so kind of matching for the most part the original project plan is not all project costs has been executed, so we still got a way to go to see what will happen there. If there's no questions on the governmental side, I'll just say again, the appendices have your rating report, some more discussion on the fund balance and why we need it, and then the capital list and the TID annual reports. I do not intend to go through those in the interest of time, but we can jump to the utilities if there's no questions on those.
Questions? Lynn and Tim.
I just have a question on the chart on page 37. The levy components. Maybe I'm missing it, but I'm seeing the general fund and TID number 4 debt service being the same color. Are we putting those together in this?
Oh, sure. No, there's actually no, if you'd go back a few slides to 22, there just is no TID 4 debt service. So that's just kind of a formatting thing that obviously we can remove.
So it's just not part
Yeah,
of that
it's-
component?
yeah, yep.
Thank you.
But good question, yep.
Tim.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions about the net new construction calculation. Are public buildings included in that? That's like when we build our,
Not
then-
taxable.
okay, and then how about properties in a TID?
Yes, so net new construction you do get, in terms of beyond a TID created after October 1st of 2024, so a 25 TID, those only will get 90% in your allowable levy limit. So those will go down, and so there is kind of a different calculation forthcoming for any new TIDs created beyond this point. But that said, you don't have any of those TIDs in existence yet, so you're getting 100% of net new construction there.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Brian.
So then we can switch to the utilities one. Should be a separate document. Maybe a few down. Yeah, it's going to be probably 20 pages past this. Yeah, keep going. It's a good thing I didn't print this, right?
can use the bookmarks too, Rich.
It's not bookmarked, I don't
Yes,
think.
it is. Oh, it is, yeah, 97.
Okay.
Found it.
We've been here a while. Oh, perfect, yep. So we'll start with the water utility. The main thing I kind of want to focus on, this is going to be quicker than the governmental side. But the way to think about both these utilities is we have two main goals. Maintain adequate cash in the system because utilities have volatile maintenance expenses, right? They're very capital intensive. It costs a lot of money to put those assets in the ground and in the air. But you want some cash to be able to handle the volatility, as well as we've just seen a high amount of inflation relative to utility projects versus some other projects, just looking at kind of construction cost indexes and other things like that. So cash is king for the utilities, so we want to maintain cash. The other thing is we want to make sure that we're covering our debt at a certain ratio. So you kind of take annual cash revenues against cash expenditures, so we don't include depreciation in this calculation. And you want that net dollar amount to cover that to be $1.60 for every dollar of debt service. So we're really looking to make sure that on an annual basis, we have some extra cash flow to maintain some of this volatility for those maintenance expenditures, and then we hold cash in order to help pay for projects, downsize debt when needed, but also kind of capture some unknown inflationary pressures. For example, right, a very large treatment plant upgrade or things like that. So that's kind of the main two things that we're going to be looking at. Then the other component is the fund that we have with the Public Service Commission for the water utility. So here, what we're kind of looking at, and we did present this last year going into the rate case that was just filed with the Public Service Commission, is kind of where you sit on a cash basis for how much revenue should we generate through our user rates. The way that we look at that, if you don't recall, is our cash expenses for O&M and taxes, your debt payment, and then what we call cash funded capital. So sorry, this is a slide back. And subtract out your non-rate revenues, that builds your revenue requirement, or how much revenues should we have from user rates. And then we kind of show that revenue requirement against how much revenues we've actually been generating. So you've had some inflationary pressures for operating and maintenance expenditures for the utility. And then in addition to that, you've had a lot of capital expenditures as well. So if you go down to the PSC side, that NIRB number, that's how much asset value you have in the system. That's doubled, more than doubled since 2020. That's kind of the impetus for doing the sequential rate cases, and the unfortunate truth that how the PSC controls water rates is only a point in time when you apply. So we can't say, hey, we got 3 years of some big projects. Can we apply for a 3-year set of rate adjustments? You cannot. So you kind of have to do these and be kind of timely with them. But that's kind of how we got to the point with the water utility of doing a rate case this year. And we did submit that in July. As you know, I came to the July meeting to present the results of that rate application. We haven't heard back yet from the PSC, so there's really no movement there, but I just kind of wanted to point that out and remind everybody of how we got there in terms of the rate case. On the next slide, looking at again where the utility has been. The utility does have a good reserves position in terms of from 2020 through 2024, while even using some reserves. So while I'd say that's a good position to be in, again, there's been kind of a need to improve the system and also expand the system as you continue to grow. So it's just kind of important. You might want to be a little higher than our targets that are the orange bars there, so that you can protect yourselves against those inflationary pressures as mentioned. The other thing is, as noted, right, with these increased capital costs and new depreciation, This chart on the bottom right is basically imagining what if the PSC didn't have a rate of return and just wanted you to collect operating and maintenance expense and depreciation. So as you can see, the last rate case kind of set us right, and now we have another rate case because we have more large projects hitting the books. And if you remember, the longer we wait, the greater the magnitude of that PSC resultant increase gets. So that's kind of why we're doing these almost back to back, but I'll kind of show that in more detail on the next slide. So this is kind of the 10-year plan for the water utility, and right now we have that rate case filed. Could be about a 50% increase. Again, we haven't heard back from the PSC. They're going to ask Lauren and I a bunch of fun questions that we're really looking forward to answering, and then the PSC will make their determinations in terms of what we applied for and their adjustments to what they're going to file for your rate changes. So again, it is out of the board's hands at this point. It's all in the PSC's hands, as I presented in July. But that said, as mentioned, that increase is really needed. I want to lead your eyes. If you look at the column that's 2027 and the second to last row, that's that debt coverage that we were speaking to. Everything is solved. We want to keep that around 1.6, 1.4 is kind of the minimum, which I've kind of allowed here. And then the other component that I'm thinking about is I'm projecting that PSC math out into the future and saying, I'm trying to mitigate a one-time adjustment at 20% or lower as best I can. So there, if you're wondering, how in the heck do you come up with these random percentages of 14.33, 18.98, etc. That's actually projecting the PSC math into the future and saying, if we did a rate case there, that's how much it would be. So then the other question is, all right, well, what would it be if we, for example, didn't do one in 28 and didn't do anything until 2030? Add up those three percentages and the PSC would make you do that in 1 year. That's how the PSC works. So if you think about it, if you were to wait, right, all of a sudden you could have about a 50% adjustment again in 2030, and then say a 25% adjustment in 2032. So all in all, if you were to wait the entire time, they could almost double your rates with one rate case. So that's kind of why we show it broken up. Again, the goal being knowing we can't choose what our adjustment is. We can only do these full rate cases to their math or a simplified if we qualify. We've solved under those parameters, and then with the ultimate goal of keeping financial sustainability with that all-in debt coverage. So then what do those percentages, while scary, mean for a change to what we'll call an average residential bill? And this average residential bill is for the 5/8 or 3/4 inch meter, and then the amount of usage per month. So right here on this one, we have 3,000 gallons per month, and there the 51% changes a monthly bill by about $12. And then in total over the plan period, a monthly bill change of about $40 there. And then also noting, where does that put us with water rates in Dane County? The current rates are the lower orange line, and then the rates that the PSC are currently reviewing is that upper orange line that kind of lands you in the middle in terms of, and this is kind of sorted on the 12,000 gallons per quarter chart. So this is only for a water bill. This does not include a sewer bill. Do not be misled by utility names that have water and sewer in them, inclusive of your own. Only because what we're grabbing is this is publicly available on the PSC's website. We've just added the math for your new rates and the impact and kind of where you land. This has not changed since July because we haven't heard back from the PSC yet. So we would expect to hear back soon, right during budget season, which is great. And we'll answer all those questions from the PSC, and then I would expect that rates still would be implemented as scheduled for around 1/1/26. So I've kind of gone through all these recommendations there in terms of what we are looking for to achieve, and these lower magnitude of adjustments. The only thing is the fourth check mark there is, we do have some conservatism built in where we're not adding any new users for increased rate revenues, but certainly that could change the math in the future as you add users and they're not impacting the system greatly, adding costs that could lower, right, the impact on the adjustments. So then moving into the sewer utility, looking at a similar rate performance chart here in terms of a historical perspective. The one thing there is just getting an understanding that we do not have the Public Service Commission. We do have the same financial goals. So I do want to kind of say focus on the top half of this because it's imperative that you cover your cash expenditures of the system. And there we've kind of solved the minimum recommended debt coverage of 1.4. And looking there, obviously, we have some added debt service coming on, as well as increased O&M pressures from the sewer utility. So, we kind of have asked for these increases in prior presentations. That's kind of led to this point as well. So about 30% in terms of what we're looking at moving into the future. I'll kind of get into that in a second. Some of the historical financial indicators, good cash position, and generally, that operating ratio is at about 1. Now, the one thing there is, again, that's kind of not gaining any rate of return. And I think that's a fair position to be in for a sewer utility going through a large treatment plant project, as you're going to have kind of new costs and a lot of new depreciation added there. And hence, we've kind of tried to maintain with this and not also punish the ratepayers in a large magnitude as best as possible. But understanding too, we do have some cash to protect ourselves as we go into the future. So as I mentioned, for the 26 budget, we'd kind of shown historically, and it's continued to form as more actuals come out. The final phase in terms of these increases for the treatment plant and building towards some of that, what was new debt service is now existing because the loans have been taken out and you're drawing on those Clean Water Fund loans, is the 30% adjustment for 2026. And then beyond that, I have changed how the utilities, so the sewer side specifically, has looked. And the main goal here is kind of keeping the same financial goals, around the 1.6, and can allow going it down to 1.4 for debt coverage and healthy cash while also using some of that cash. But I've kind of changed when the adjustments happen, more so to kind of protect the total utility bill, right? Generally, a water user is a sewer user. So if we have one going up significantly, can we try to navigate around that? So for 2027 and beyond, there's been some adjustments there in terms of when we're doing the rate adjustments and the magnitude of those, while keeping the same financial goals throughout the 10-year plan period. So a little more manageable as we had, the big adjustments necessary due to the legacy project at the treatment plant, and then some more manageable increases as we go into the future, 2027 and kind of biannually after that point, all structured around what the water utility is doing. Again, some of this will change obviously as we go into future planning periods, but just understanding that this provides, achieves all of our financial goals, while also I'm trying to mitigate the rate adjustments as much as possible while meeting those goals. So then this is kind of the totality in terms of the impact there. This is used for 4,000 gallons a month, so I just kind of want to note that there. And this shows both the water and the sewer bill individually, and then annualizes both of those on the right-hand side. So chronologically, top to bottom, left to right, we go water, sewer monthly, and then on the right-hand side, annual. And then we kind of weigh that against the median household income. So the one thing there, understandably, this is, the 5-yard line of a 100-yard football field in terms of affordability using MHI. It is kind of the standard from AWWA, any sort of utility studies that you'll see. I know the University of Michigan has some good rate affordability studies in the past couple of years. But generally, you'll find they talk about 2% of MHI per utility is kind of a concern. That's kind of where we're raising the yellow flag. And then quickly 3 to 4% per utility is the red flag in terms of affordability. I think obviously that can be shaken up differently depending on where does that median reside, right? There's individuals in all categories in terms of income, and kind of what is your own individual makeup there. But just to get us to that 5-yard line there, still relatively healthy. The other thing I'll mention just anecdotally, you know, we do this for a lot of communities, obviously throughout the state. Generally, we are in for 2 utilities closer to the 2 to 3% range earlier on. So specifically after doing large treatment plant projects and other capital needs. So they're just kind of anecdotally still relatively healthy there in terms of the median household income metric. And then the other thing that I'll point out, again, it's about a $40 change for both utilities on a total monthly bill over 10 years. So again, that's not in 1 year, that's over 10 years here. And then to kind of compare where the sewer is, this is not publicly, I should say, kind of taken into one area. You have to go to individual communities' websites and hope that they post their rates. But looking there, just kind of surrounding area, you have a few that are relatively higher in Belleville and Brooklyn in terms of 80 plus per month, and then Stoughton's at about $35 per month. Oregon, you know, same 4,000 gallons, about $39 a month, and then kind of by the end of the plan period, getting to about $76 per month. So again, there for the sewer utility, had a little bit of conservatism, not inputting any new users in terms of rate revenues. So if that were to come true, could lower the need for the increases as we go. Any questions? I know that was a lot, but I got through all the funds.
I have one.
Yeah.
The PSC is reviewing the water rate proposal. On what basis would they say yes or no? I mean, the math is the math, right?
Yeah, it's more or less not a yes or no for them. We've applied, so it's a yes. It's more of a how much and kind of reviewing the utilities since the last rate case. So I'm hoping, you know, their findings are much less, obviously, because we just went in for a rate case 2.5 years ago. But that said, they kind of will tweak the ask, right, that we originally made based off of their audit findings. So it isn't really yes or no, it's kind of a how much at this point. Generally, I would say we're within like 5%. Sometimes they surprise us with certain things. I would say this current regime in the PSC does want utilities to collect more for maintenance, which is a little surprising to me. But that said, like, they have been more aggressive. I had one revenue requirement that came out Friday that I just talked to the utility today and said, we got to fight this because this is unfair for your ratepayers. So current regime, a little more pushy in terms of how much revenues they want you to collect. So I would say there's maybe a chance for a no in terms of what our opinion is and recommendation to staff that might come before you, depending on, you know, when the PSC reveals that information. But that said, it's probably around that 50% is where it'd come out.
Good.
Along those same lines, Rich, if you can scroll up to the rate comparison by Dane County for the water, just to give a little context to this. So when you see us jumping up, that's assuming that nobody else on this chart is also applying for a rate increase. And you would say that that's fairly crazy that no one on this chart would be applying for a rate increase. So we may not actually sit there at the end of the day, depending on what other municipalities also decide to do, correct?
100% correct. I happen to know a few of these that are going in for rate cases from personal experience. So that's why I do include the effective date there. The other ones that, right, we're not working for, we can obviously see if they haven't adjusted their rates for some time, they're probably due. And then the unfiltered truth is they probably don't realize where they sit with the PSC math, and they may be cash flowing, but then all of a sudden get a 30% adjustment because their asset base is just increased in terms of new assets added and things like that. The other point that I'll mention going beyond the answer is just to say, if I were running a utility in the state of Wisconsin, I would want to be in the middle because that means I'm probably not due for a larger magnitude adjustment outside of projects that just come up and just have such a high asset value. Because if I'm sitting at the bottom, I'm generally probably at 1.0. I have a catch-up adjustment of 30%, and now I have doubling the asset value because of a treatment plan upgrade. And that's adding 50%, so now I have an 80% increase, which you want to avoid. So we've helped communities through a 211% increase, 171% increase, so it's not unheard of.
Thank you.
Yep.
Amanda?
Yeah, so I have kind of a weird one. I just happened to be looking at this same chart and looking down the list of municipalities, and they all are ones I recognized until I read the fourth one down, Applewood Hill Water Utility. And I just Googled that because I was like, oh, where's that? And I realized that's us. But that's a separate contract, right? Am I understanding that's like run separately or something because... Or Google's wrong. I don't know. That's entirely possible
That's
too.
that AI slot.
I'm just gonna say. All I did was Google it and it said it's run by the Village of Oregon Water Utility. And I went, what?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna, that's why I have questions. That's not the Oak Hill. Yeah, isn't it Oak Hill?
No, it's a separate,
That's a-
separate legal entity that would not be run by you. So if you had,
So I'm just curious how that's in this chart. I don't understand where it is or.
yeah, I think we
don't
could
know.
probably find, right, if you go to one of their annual reports, you could see where their address is, number one, and then kind of see who runs it with the first couple of pages in the annual report. But it's my understanding going through the last rate case that you have no interest in the
Applewood.
Yeah.
But then where is it? 'Cause
Sure.
Shorewood. Okay, Google is wrong, or Bing, or whatever I used to search for it. Never mind.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Brian.
Yes, thank
As
you all.
always.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Fascinating.
Okay, item 4C, public comment. This part of the agenda allows members of the public to provide information to the village board, including items both on and off the agenda. 15 minutes will be provided for this item with a 3-minute maximum per speaker. Anyone here for public comments? Public comments? See none, thank you. Item 5, approval of vouchers in the amount of $2,232,038.33. Staff recommendation, motion to approve. Tom and Amanda. Questions, comments? Anyone? Okay, so roll call vote. We have a motion by Tom and a second by Amanda.
Knipfer,
Yes.
Van Campen,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
McDaniel,
Yes.
Higgins,
Yes.
Marks,
Yes.
and Kirchdorfer.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 6, consent agenda. Items 6A through 6F, staff recommendation, motion to approve. Amanda and Rick. Questions on any of these items? Amanda?
Yeah, I had a question on 6F, which is the professional services for the Jefferson Street and Alpine Parkway intersection project. If in the future we want to put in a light there that has the audible signals for people who are visually impaired, there's nothing we'd need to do to add to this contract now to prepare for that, right?
Not to my knowledge. We are actually meeting with them sometime this week to kind of check in on stuff, and that has been on my list to tell them about and tell them needs to be in the scope.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
What else?
Did you have something else?
I did. It's on an unrelated topic, though. We looked up Applewood Hill.
Oh.
It is a very small community up by Pleasant View. If you're by the Hawks Landing neighborhood, this is the
Yeah.
only reason I know where it is. It's like this little kind of road that loops out on the other side, on the east side of Pleasant View Road there. And they seem to run their own community water system there. So it is in Madison technically. It is obviously not the Madison Water Utility, and it is very, very tiny.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Bing is wrong, so for anyone at home and you Google it, don't use Bing because it's wrong. Okay.
Okay. All right, we have a motion by Amanda, second by Rick. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, reports for committees and for discussion and or possible action. A, Plan Commission. Okay, let's see. One is resolution number 25-30, a resolution approving a surveyed map adjusting lot lines between 550 and 560 North Burr Oak Avenue. I see Elise is in here, but I think I can explain it. Yeah. What's that?
We've seen this before.
Oh, okay, all right. So any questions on it, what it is? Guys? No? Okay.
Make a motion.
All right. Tim and Amanda. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 2, resolution number 25-31, a resolution approving a surveyed survey map combining 4 lots and a vacated portion of Waterman Street into 1 lot for a new Oregon Area Senior Center project located at near 219 Park Street. Commission and staff recommendation, motion to approve. Tom, Paige. Questions? Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 3, ordinance number 25-11, an ordinance to amend the official zoning map for property located at near 219 Park Street to the Central Business Zoning District and Plan Development Overlay Zoning District, and to approve a general development plan for the new Oregon Senior Center project. Commission and staff recommendation, motion to approve. Amanda and Tom, questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 4, ordinance number 25-12, an ordinance amending the official zoning map for property located near 110 North Oak Street to the Industrial Zoning District and Plan Development Overlay Zoning District, and to approve a general development plan for the Oregon Youth Center. Commission and staff recommendation, motion to approve. Amanda, Tim, questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 5, ordinance number 25-13, an ordinance amending the official zoning map for property located at 169, 203, and 215 South Main Street to the multifamily residential -8 zoning district and planned development overlay zoning district, and approved a general revised general development plan for senior affordable multifamily housing project. Commission and staff recommendation, motion to approve. Tim? Yeah, Paige? Questions, comments? Amanda?
If we had feedback about the visual look of this, when does that happen? Is that,
The specific implementation plan, site plan approval would happen at Plan Commission. I don't think that it happened at the last one.
I thought they talked about it because I was there and they got some feedback as to the red parts of the building and Am I thinking about the wrong,
thinking
right
of a
one? Or the wrong-
different
Oh,
one.
different one. Okay, well, even on this one though, I just wanted to give feedback, sorry, it's coming back to me. I talked about a lot in that meeting. So the South Main, someone came up a constituent came up afterward and had given me some feedback, in a photo of ways that we could break it up, like visually, like the colors, and make some suggestions. And I just wanted to say something now, because if we wait until we get it present, by the time it goes through planning commission and comes to us, it feels late in the process.
So the
don't
SIP
know.
does not come to the village board. It stays, a final approval is at plan commission.
Oh, okay.
So, I don't think they have approved it yet, so they should provide comment to the plan commission.
To the plan commission,
Yep.
okay. Am I allowed to provide those
Yeah,
comments to the
absolutely.
planning
Yeah,
commission?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
then I'll do that, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay, a motion by Tim, second by Paige. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, resolution number 25-32, a resolution approving a certified survey map for 5214 County Highway CC, dedicating right-of-way. Commission and staff recommendation, motion to approve as presented. Tom and Amanda. Questions, comments on this?
Yeah,
Tim.
I have a question. Isn't this still part of the town of Oregon?
Correct, yep, and this is conditioned on it being annexed. So
Okay.
this is not effective until annexation occurs.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anybody else? No? Motion by Tom, second by Amanda. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7. Ordinance number 25-14, an ordinance amending the official zoning map for property located near 5214 County Road CC to the multifamily residential -8 zoning district and planned development overlay zoning district, and to approve a revised general development plan for multifamily development. Commission and staff recommendation, motion to approve as presented. Amanda and Rick.
Yeah, this is the one. Yeah,
Questions? Lynn.
I have a comment and a question. So first, thank you for including the written feedback in the public notices section of this agenda. I appreciated hearing from residents and constituents. While we don't tend to, we're not typically able to like answer questions or things like that, I did want to say that it's clear through the Ellers presentation that new development, new construction is really important in the, future of the village and being able to provide the services that we provide. And I will also say that we've done a lot to try and put the conservation plan into action nearby, because we know that there's a lot of development happening in this area. So we are going to make some dedicated spaces more natural and accessible for people to be a part of nature on this side of the village. So may not help anyone sleep better at night, but just thought I would address that. My question, during the planning commission discussion, and this might be similar to where Amanda is, I just am not sure how these things work in the process, but there was discussion about the water main and the developers wanting to privatize that essentially, or to run that themselves. By the board approving this, we're not addressing that right now, right? Like, we're still in discussions about how we want to navigate that, or how the plan commission wants to navigate that. I don't know who has say on that. I just noted it during plan commission.
Yeah, so the general development plan and the zoning map amendment is really just the zoning approval. So
Okay.
we're saying that this project specifically is allowed. They can use the land in this way. And when they use planned development, in this case, what we're also creating is sort of a special ordinance for the project specifically and its zoning requirements. So this is where we can allow for certain exceptions to our zoning standards. And in this case, we're allowing a certain amount of units to be created, dwelling units to be created. We're allowing a taller building than what we would normally allow. We're allowing more density with the units, as inclusive of the additional units that are being allowed. Here we're allowing 2 principal buildings because we're allowing apartment building and a townhouse structure to be built on one property. So what this approval is doing is just saying, here are your zoning requirements. This is how you can use the land. And now what will come after that is the specific implementation plan, which is the site plan. And that is sort of the laundry list of all the other requirements, zoning requirements, inclusive of, engineering requirements, comments and things like that. That will come later, and then that ends at the Plan Commission.
Great, thank you.
Tim?
Yeah, I would like to say that in justification for this project, Dane County has a housing deficit of 8,000 houses. And as of September 1st, there were 1,075 households that do not currently have a home. Of those, 70 of those families include children. And that's why we're building housing. Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
I'll just add, I guess uniquely for this project specifically, is to I think to Tim's question, this property hasn't been annexed yet, so we're working with the developer to process these efficiently before that actually happens. And so if there is something about this project that you end up not liking for some reason, you do hold the annexation card, which is a discretionary choice of the village board. So compared to the previous project where the site plan will now end at the Plan Commission, with this project there is one more step that will have to happen, and it will have to come back through here. So if there are some things that maybe you don't like about it, or maybe you want changed or corrected, you still have that card that you can play at the end of it.
Amanda?
Yeah, this is more of a process thing too. I think a lot of us, I've been on the board the longest, and I still did not, I still struggle to figure out when the best time is for input for projects. And I know we had talked about making like a timeline for a project, and when public gives input, and when the board and everybody gets their input, and I don't know what happened to that.
Yeah, those things, that exists. It is an ordinance right now. It's just a matter of, I think in the past we've talked about putting it in a place and format that is easily accessible and decipherable.
Yeah.
And so that's a project that we just simply have not been able to get to because of all the other demands and projects that have been placed upon us.
Okay.
But those things exist, and just broadly and generally, the time to provide input is when it lands on an agenda, right? So when it's on an agenda, that is the time to start having that input. Generally, we have these things on Plan Commission, which is, there is some statutory requirement of that, right? You have to have a Plan Commission, and it has to be, these items have to be referred to the Plan Commission before you as an elected body can take final action on those things. And in some cases, you can delegate some of those decisions, which we have in Oregon on the specific implementation plans to the Plan Commission. So, these processes are defined. They are in ordinance and supported by statute. So the time to provide input is when they start becoming on agendas.
Okay. Is there a way that, and I'm raising my hand, volunteer here, that I could assist with that? And I know Elise is on vacation this week, so she's not here, but I don't think it would take long to sit down and just put something together that defines what is a CSM, what is an SIP, to help the public navigate that and figure out what point they give input. Most of the time, their comments would fall into just a couple of categories. I mean, I'm happy to help to take that burden off of staff, because I don't want you guys, I mean, just maybe make something up, a mock flow chart or something that would assist.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have a conversation with Elise and see if there's something that can be helpful there.
Okay.
I would just add that while I sit on the planning commission, I'm probably the least able person on that commission. The people there have been there a long time. They're very capable. And I find that they do very much pay attention to the public comments, and they're willing to ask the petitioners to make changes. So people shouldn't feel that their comments will not go unheard. The planning commission is very good about listening to the members of the public. And the only other thing I would add is, if you want to know where things are happening in the village, it's at the planning commission level. And that's the place where you have the best chance of having input on projects like these. Tim, you had something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I find the planning commission to also be responsive to concerns about the environment and trees and things like that. And I think there have been a lot of cases where they've advocated to maybe not disrupt the environment as much as maybe the developer had originally planned. But kind of to your point, I think, I try really hard to attend in person, the planning commission meetings all the time, because I feel like I'm lost otherwise. And even like after the meetings, you can kind of go ask questions. Hey, I didn't understand this part. And usually the folks on the commission will help you sort of understand it. So I just find that useful from my standpoint, for my role on the board. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's great. The impact, I mean, I go when I can, but my issue is more like, as a village board member, I don't want to have an oversized influence. Like, I just figured that whatever the planning commission sees, that we'd see it later and approve. But if it's something like, I'd like to see the building be a different color, right? Am I overstepping my bounds as a village official by going to a planning commission meeting and talking to them about it when I'm gonna have the power to oversee it anyway? Do you know what I'm saying? That was like my hang up for not saying something at a planning commission meeting.
Path there.
But anyway, we're off topic. I'm sorry. Just trying to get the
Yeah.
process.
Okay. Okay. Any additional questions, comments? Okay, we have a motion by Amanda, second by Rick. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 8, unfinished business, items for discussion and or possible action. A, resolution number 25-23, a resolution discontinuing a portion of Waterman Street between Brook Street and Park Street under Wisconsin statute 66.1003 sub 4. I think we all have a clear understanding of what is going on here. We don't need an additional staff input. Okay. I will then open a public hearing. This part of the,
I just asked, did he open the public hearing and then he
no. This part of the agenda allows members of the public to provide information to the village board related to the topic at hand. A time limit of 3 minutes per speaker is set unless otherwise modified by the village board. Anyone here to make public comments on this item? Anyone? Come on. Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Item 2, village board discussion and possible action on resolution. Planning commission and staff recommendation, motion to approve as presented. Tom? And Amanda? Questions, comments? Hearing none. Oh, sorry, Lynn. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a really quick comment that as we're finalizing this, there's a lot of work that went on behind this that was really detailed and respectful for those who were involved, and just want to really thank you for that work. And it's not seen when we do these things, so just to call that out, really appreciate it.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, motion by Tom, second by Amanda. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, per the request of trustee Kirstover, without objection, we will now move to 8D and then proceed with the agenda in order after that. Tom, you might want to open the comments.
I'm only asked to have the budget planning process discussed. The last meeting we had a lot of discussion about values and things that we valued in the beginning of this process. We acknowledged the need for projects that would reduce or create efficiencies. But we also have projects in the CIP which would have occurred first, which I think is going to add work for our staff and people, and we should have the discussions and express our values in relationship to added work.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to have that discussion about the budget itself first. And so we talk about our values in relationship to that. And then when we go to the CIP, there may be a project or two that might have to have some adjustment if we think differently.
Okay. Martin. Sorry. Point of order? Or? No?
All right, so let me, I guess I can do kind of a long version of this, or I can do a short version of this. I guess I'll just do the short version, and if you guys want to pile on with comments or questions, I can be happy to go into more detail. I guess for the purposes of this item, it's just continuing conversation from what we had at the last meeting. In the packet, I have a memo that just sort of seeks to, number one, give an update on where we are internally with a little bit more of the micro level of budget, the draft budget for 2026, and then just to make sure that we understand, staff and board understand each other and are aligned on sort of the direction that we're going in. And then if the board wants to have any additional conversations related to these items, they are certainly free to do so. I guess as it stands right now, we have most of the priority items that were identified in the assessment that I provided to the board at the last meeting. The only thing from a budgetary perspective that isn't in there is the HR manager position, which was the third priority for new staffing that was listed. And then also there was some discussion, and some interest from board members on a community development position for economic development purposes. That's not in there either. So those two positions are not in, but everything else looks like, I feel reasonably good today, at least, that these things will get in the budget. But we'll see how some final numbers come in and where they break in terms of positive or negative impact on the budget. The other things that were in the assessment from last time were a lot of different initiatives and ideas, projects that maybe don't have an immediate or have maybe more of a minimal operational budget impact. And so we can certainly continue ahead with those things. Those are things like the police operational study, the public works programs and policies and service levels. We talked about outsourcing property maintenance and exploring that, updating the building permit fee schedule, looking at the partnership with the chamber. Those are things that can kind of all go on as a priority and as a project as we go into 2026. We'll say I had a conversation. We've been doing our budget meetings internally with departments. We had a good one on Friday with the police chief talking about the police department budget. And one thing that we want to address sooner rather than later is getting that operational study underway, not waiting until 2026 and maybe coming to you sooner, even as soon as the next meeting to have conversations about. Let's not wait on that. We know based on their budget worksheet that they have some very significant strain and some staff burnout and some overload, and it's not getting any better. And so, we fit the priority of their non-union sworn staff getting a little bit more of a pay bump into the 2026 draft, but that's not going to solve all of their problems. And so that study is really seen as an opportunity to provide a real backbone for making the case for additional staffing and additional resources for the department. And we talked about in our budget meeting I think there's a compelling case when we get through with that study, for however long it takes, that maybe even sooner than 2028, having a referendum may be desirable, especially when we're talking about needs for police departments, or need for our police department. My expectation we'll have that as an item on the next agenda to discuss in more detail, but just wanted to highlight that specifically. We had a couple conversations at the last meeting about our committee structure, the outreach program. Obviously, those are related to efficiencies of time, not necessarily related to dollars in the budget. We can have those conversations, continue to have those conversations parallel with the budget. And then some of the other things that we talked about that weren't necessarily recommended as part of my assessment, but some other options, including some funding. We talked about the youth center, OCA media. Are there any other places to reduce, cut, outsourcing? We talked about some revenue stuff. I have some other things, some more information in there about some other ideas and things that kind of came up. But right now, we're not going to proceed with any of those unless we get some kind of affirmative board direction there. I think it's page 396 of the packet, and it summarizes all of this into a little bit of a table, and you can see where we think we're moving towards and what we heard from the board at the last meeting, and if there's anything else, any other questions or directions that need to be given, we are happy to take them.
It's page 297 if you have the older version of the packet. If you're having trouble finding that, the 396 is with the Eller's presentation.
Sorry, thanks.
Yep.
Good, yeah, good catch.
I had it written down. So, well, let's just first general questions or comments. Then I have a plan, believe it or not. Tom and Amanda.
First off, I guess on page 391, we talk about the two new positions, and I don't believe they're in the budget now. Is that correct?
Correct, they are not.
Okay. I guess I guess when I look at the staffing and the people that we have within our organization, a human resources manager makes an awful lot of sense to me. It would have the biggest impact on people, a wide variety of managers. It would help the police chief with hiring and recruiting staff. It would help onboarding people. I've watched Rachel go through and try to schedule interviews and arranging people, and there's a lot of work that goes into those kinds of things, and I see that as a good value add kind of scenario. The community development position, I think that's where we start to make a choice between what do we want to be and where do we want to go as a community. And the question is, where do we find something and where we start talking about our values. I don't have a total list. I can't go through and line items, single items, but I guess my first thought was when I start to look at a parks crew person, we're in a position that we're expanding our parks, and I'm not sure that all of that expansion is reducing our staff, but increasing the workload on the people that we have. And I guess I think we need to look at some of those CPI projects and say, maybe we should slow parts of them down that would require a lot of maintenance, a lot of work, a lot of mowing, a lot of irrigation. That would be a place I would look ahead of cutting community communications and community support of youth and other programs like that. So that when we talk about values, that's something that I would look towards.
Amanda.
Yeah, I had a question. What would happen to like the community movie night? Is that something that we've planned to cut for next year, or?
No, as of right now, we were maintaining status quo as much as we can.
Okay, because that feels to me, and I love the community movie night. I think it's a good program, but if we're looking at things, if we want to pull back, that's something to me that we could cut temporarily. it does cost money. I mean, I don't remember how much Leanne told me once, but it probably
I
a couple
believe, I
thousand.
believe that that is actually covered by donations and sponsorships.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then we can't really do that. If people want it and they pay for it themselves, then great.
I guess,
Go ahead, Tom.
I guess the reason I pointed at the Parks Group person, not because I'm, have an objection to the parks or expansion of the parks or those kinds of things, but it's a position we don't have anyone in right now. And pulling it out of the budget, it means we would not be laying off anybody. It makes it difficult. Some people would be disappointed, I know, but I guess we're into that point of we're making hard choices, and if I have to make a choice between having somebody helping us develop community entities and community businesses and increasing our tax base so we can afford some of those things, that might be a place where I would have slowed maybe some of our park expansion projects down.
Okay. Lynn?
I have a question along that line, Martin. I think I know the answer, but I'd really love you to tell us in this meeting. Community development positions. Our neighbors, some of our neighbors who have a strong commercial presence and are able to diversify a bit of their tax base to more of a commercial side than just simply on our residents. How many community development positions do they often have?
I mean, you have to go community to community, right? Stoughton, for example, I believe has 3, a director, I think an associate planner, and then an administrative assistant for the department. But yeah, I mean, I think typically in communities this size, you'll often see at least a director and some sort of associate or an economic development specialist or some kind of second position, or at least an administrative support so that the director can be a little bit more strategic with their time, so that there's somebody who can answer basic questions and things like that.
Thank you.
Amanda?
I had a question, because I mentioned that to somebody that we were considering cutting our salary in half, the village board's salary. And they said, I thought that was statutorily defined. And so I had a question, is that something we can actually do?
You have to go through a process to change your salaries. There's there's a statutory process to do it. Yeah.
But we could
You
have
could-
it, or
you
we
could have
could
it, you
just
could-
not take it, or whatever.
Yep.
All those are on the table.
Yep.
Okay.
Who's next? Tim?
I guess I would just say that from reading through the memo, I was pretty happy with where we're at so far. I feel like we've made some good progress. We're adding some of the things we really want. I agree that community development and HR are things I wish we could fit in there, but I don't have any suggestions for what to take out to make that fit in. And maybe we just look at trying to fit that into next year's 2027 budget. I think that the community development is likely to have a long time return in that, you're not going to make some deals and suddenly have a bunch of new tax revenue within 12 months. It's going to be years in the working. So, while it's great to plant seeds when you can, I think it's okay if we wait a year on that. HR, I'm a little bit more torn on, but
The other thing I'll add is if things break a little bit more positively in some of these final budgetary numbers that we need, I know shared revenue came out today and was a little bit more. Usually the last one we get is the transportation aids, which is early to mid-October, and they've surprised us in past years in good ways. But if things kind of move positively, there may be an opportunity to put one of these positions into the budget and fill it for half a year, and then fill it for the full year in the following budget in 2027. So we could certainly, see if that's a possibility, and we could decide which one we want to pick, or if there's a trade-off idea or something of that nature.
Lynn?
Yeah, so I think my thoughts on the prioritization of the HR and the community development positions, I will speak in favor of where Tom is headed a little bit. Not that I don't love a park. I love a park. And I love a parks crew person. I think the idea that we may be able to do positions part of the year or phase some of those positions in if things break makes me feel like maybe in my mind reprioritizing potentially. I agree with you, Tim, that the return on investment, especially in the community development, right, won't be immediate. But I do think that it's a nice nod to our community to say that we've heard you. And if we're feeling like a referendum is going to be needed, necessary to ask for again, I'd like to go back to them saying we're doing the most that we can possibly do to find more tax base that is not single family homes or even multi-family. I I think that it was very apparent in those discussions that commercially we can grow, we should grow. We can't ask that of our current staff. They are at capacity. And so I'm speaking a little bit in favor of where Tom is headed here because I do think that potentially changing the order of those staffing ideas sets us up for success in multiple positions, but then also just it says what we're prioritizing. It speaks to what we've heard in the last couple of years and gives an effort to try and ease some of that pressure on our residential tax payers.
Amanda?
So I just want some clarity. Are you just looking at those two, the HR and the community development?
Yeah, I'm looking at and the math isn't mathing, but the parks crew person being in right now and these two being out right now.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. The only thing is the human resources manager, I feel like that is a really huge burden on staff right now. And in order to free up staff time and prevent that burnout, I would speak definitely, I'd like to keep HR in the mix because I think that frees up our staff to do a lot of other things, like the rest of the staff,
Who's next? Anybody? Okay, I just would reaffirm that I have a strong interest in hiring the community development position. And I can see the potential of weighing that parks position against that. I hadn't really thought about that till tonight, but certainly I'll take that in the mix of my thinking. I am not abandoning the idea of reducing the youth center and OSA media funding to fund one of those positions. I'm not asking you to decide on that right now or tonight, but I just want to reaffirm that I believe that that's unfortunately low-hanging fruit and might make the difference on one of these positions. Anyone else comments on this particular one? No? Are you getting information you need, or can I help, or?
Yeah, no, I think this is all fine. I guess one more thing I would maybe add on HR manager, community development position. You could think of it in terms too of like, where do you want my position to focus? Because right now, obviously with Elise being sort of a single person department, and at least for kind of the economic development and zoning stuff, I probably spend a good portion of my time working with her because she just needs it. I mean, other people have departments and they have some staff and that sort of thing. And so I spend probably a good percentage of my time helping her with development stuff. So you can think of it in terms of if you hire an HR manager, well, then that takes stuff off my plate and I can spend a lot more time with her working on these things. And if you hire a community development position, well, then that takes that part of my job off a little bit and I can spend more time working on HR things. And so we could think of it in terms of that too, of, you know, where do you want your village administrator to be spending more of their time, HR or community development? And that, you know, those are sort of the, you know, if there's 4 fields of where I've sort of been trained and educated, it's, you know, the management side, it's financial management, and then the HR, and then the community development stuff. So you can also think of it through that lens as well. So whatever you hire, I'm just going to be spending more time on that other portion of it.
Can I ask a question to
Please.
that point then? Where do you feel like your efforts would bear the best fruit, HR or community development?
I would say community development because that's where I've done more work in my career. Yeah.
To clarify then, you would hire the human resources manager first.
Yes,
Yeah.
if I had a preference.
Okay. That's
But
good.
I don't think either hurts. I think, you know, based on my experience and skills, I think I'm more beneficially, I have more to offer in the community development side than the HR side.
That's really good information for me, anyway.
And that tracks.
And I
I'm
would
not
say
surprised at that answer.
there's a little bit too of, and every board is a little bit different on how they want their village administrator to be used. Some boards just want their administrator to be used internally, right? They don't want them to be out there in the world as the face of the organization. They just want them to focus on internal management. But some boards really like their administrator to be out and to be the face of the organization and to be out there. And so you can see kind of the roles here, right? So do you want me to focus a little bit more inward or do you want me to focus a little bit more outward? And sometimes having the administrator in that community development role with the face, you know, developers seem to maybe like that a little bit because they're seeing sort of the chief administrative officer. They have a little bit more reassurance. They're getting the attention, you know, that sort of thing.
Not
So
as likely to switch gears when an election comes along, maybe.
right, exactly.
Potentially.
So yeah, I guess that's just some added insight there.
I think Tom is next.
We just go back to the, you know, if we talked about a choice between human resources manager and a community development position, I still lean towards the human resources position, not just because of what it helps, Martin would be able to free up more time for community development, but it helps all the other department managers as well. And so this kind of a cross-organizational benefit to all the areas within. And so between the two, I'd lean towards the human resource manager.
Okay. Anybody else? Lynn?
I'm sorry, I have one last comment because I really don't want to ignore this parks development position that's an ask. It was in, your memo says that it was the one thing that wasn't filled from the last budget, right? Or dedication. So my question is, if things fall our way, is it possible for us to prioritize the HR role and potentially phase in that parks crew person later? Or because of the price tag of the HR, we're really like looking at HR and that's probably it?
I would say, in terms of ordering, my suggestion would be leave the parks position in and try to fill the HR manager half year.
Oh.
Because the parks crew, it's going to be needed by spring, right? That's the bulk of its importance of its work, and obviously it does some other things throughout the year with plowing and things like that. But the most beneficial thing to the operation is going to be having that position filled by March, right? So that it can start working on parks things during the spring and summer season. And if we're able to fit it in, that gives us a couple months to try to figure out how we want to recruit for the HR manager position, and that sort of thing. So you know, if you're asking me, I think that would be the most that alignment would be the most comfortable for me.
Okay.
Have we got an answer from the chamber yet? What's
We let them know that the board was interested, and right now we have a request to them for how much time they think they would want out of such a position, and then what specific tasks that they would like that position to do, because those two things are going to be kind of the pillars around which we draft this agreement. And we have not heard back from them yet
Okay.
on that.
Anybody else on this item? No? Okay, moving on. Okay, that brings us then to, let's see, we did D. So B, 8B, the resolution number 25-33, a resolution adopting the 2026-2035 capital improvement plan. Staff recommendation, motion to approve as presented. Amanda and Tim. Questions, comments? Tom?
I know we've seen this and we've talked about this plan a lot, but it never in relationship to what the impacts on additional operating costs in coming years would be. It was always in discussion in relationship to the debt and the load and what we can carry. When I look at the parks projects, and now I'm not going to be able to find it, the Gary Dish project for next year. To me, I look at that project within the parks, and that would add substantial workload to our park staff from the standpoint of maintenance, irrigation, line striping. It would be a pretty big workload. And my initial reaction would be to split that project, do the playground, neighborhood stuff this year, and put off the irrigation and more elaborate playing field surface to probably a year or so. I don't know on the Bethel Park. It does have a playing field in there, whether that would have a high maintenance requirement. That looks to me like, from a description of it, that it's more of one that would actually reduce the mowing requirements overall and might actually be a help to the staff. So I'd probably leave that one alone. But I am thinking about that maybe we should talk, as long as we're concerned about staff and staff overload and workloads, that adding another high-grade playing field is not the best thing right now.
Anybody else?
Paige is creeping towards her microphone.
Wasn't I under the impression though that some other community organizations might be helping with like maintaining the field? And can you speak to that, please? Because I know.
Sure. I have a couple of thoughts if that's okay, but didn't want to jump in. So to Gary Dish Park, number one, Paige is correct. So we typically work with soccer is the big one. They do a lot of the striping for the fields. And so they've indicated some serious, as you might expect, support for this, and that they would want to do that, particularly if that was necessary to get them a kind of high-end playing field. One benefit to this playing field, again, in relation to soccer, is that they would try to move their kind of their games and even practices away from some more neighborhood parks. That would also kind of reallocate how staff was spending their time. Right now, soccer in particular, because they are so big, is a bit of a difficult operational situation for us, and we're trying to figure out ways to make that a little bit more streamlined. And this is one thing that would help. You can, in one large playing field, and I am not a soccer player, so I've learned this very recently, you can actually fit two of the next size down playing fields. And so they would be able to really get out of some of those parks, Norm Champion being a big one, that the neighbors don't really love them being in there. It is difficult to mow and maintain back there. So this would kind of help Eric and his staff focus their efforts on kind of one facility versus splitting time, going into areas that are really wet and marshy and are very difficult to maintain, and help us kind of reallocate those resources. So in a way, I think if Eric were here tonight, he would probably say that operationally, something like this would be beneficial to the way that he runs. Just one other thing to consider on kind of a separate note is from a constructability standpoint, doing the playground first and then the playing field second would be very difficult and would risk a lot of damage to the playground itself if we were to come back and do that, because the playing field is both further from the kind of natural access point as well as lower. It would just be really challenging to get big machinery down into kind of like a landscaped area into that to that flatter part on the bottom. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's something that's come up. Ross Rutler, our chief designer, has brought that up as a concern as well. So just something to consider.
I'll also just add, we have some constituents who are, the irrigation would help their backyards. And as a resident, because I have to put this in, some of us have been waiting like, it'll be 4 years probably, for a park to be anywhere near where we reside. So I would hate to, again, speaking from me as myself too, but I would hate to delay that any further for those that are waiting.
Anybody else? Lynn?
Yeah, I mean, it changes my mind a little bit to hear you say, Martin, that leaving that parks crew person in, it sounds like it's already needed. It's not that like the adding of Gary Dish, it's sort of a chicken and egg situation, and the egg already exists, so we're already there. That was a terrible analogy, so sorry.
Explain later.
Thank you. So I guess I'm sort of in favor of leaving it. And I know that the park board has been very diligent in trying to make sure that the organizations that utilize these fields quite a bit are helping, and soccer has been great so far, and I think that we will continue to do that or have discussions about field reservation costs, which we're already having that conversation. So I think that the park board is well aware of the amount of time this takes and adding a field and the amount of time that that will add. So I'm okay to leave it right now in hopes that we will continue to just keep a very close eye on what this does to staff time, and do what we can to try and mitigate that should it get out of hand.
Tom?
I guess hearing the comments does make me feel a little bit better about going ahead with the project the list as it is. Just from the standpoint that we do need to be aware that some of these projects can add additional staff time, and I couldn't tell you everything about every single one of these projects and which one adds staff time and which doesn't, but we need to keep that in mind as we look forward.
Absolutely.
I'm confident that that has been thought of. So
Great. Additional questions or comments on the motion? Okay, we have a motion by Amanda, second by Tim. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let's see, 8C, resolution number 25-29, a resolution adopting an annual update to the financial management plan. Staff recommendation, motion to approve. Tim? Amanda? Questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Back to regular order. 8E, review and discuss modifications to the village board outreach program policy and 2025 fall outreach schedule.
I can just say something really quickly. So at the previous meeting, there was a conversation about a legal opinion on this program. Larry was here. He had to jet off to another community for their meeting tonight. But his opinion is in the packet. Generally, no issues from a legal standpoint, other than some of the things we kind of talked about, and ensuring that this remains for a public purpose and is not used as a venue for political purposes or elected purposes. And then I know that Trustee McDaniel has put forward some revisions based on some of the conversation that we had at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Lynn.
I can just summarize those really quickly. Essentially, there's three main changes. The first is that we have it already outlined that during the reorganizational meeting that occurs every year, the village president has the responsibility. He may appoint a village outreach coordinator. If he chooses not to, then that would essentially sort of halt the program. But I've put in the procedures that in addition to the coordinator position, just the general program would be up for discussion each year. So it allows us sort of a stopping point to reassess, get a sense of whether this is continuing to be worth it. And then that moved everything down. I also added or I took out a piece about communications. We had put in there that the village clerk was responsible for all communications for this program, which is way too much to put on a village clerk. So it just sort of determines that the coordinator will communicate and be cautious about how that communication is done in order to avoid quorum issues in communications. And then the last one was from Amanda's suggestion. I thought that was really smart to halt most events from December to April. So basically when candidate papers start to get circulated to the election day. There could potentially be an exception made, and should there be an event, then it would be prioritized for village board members that are not currently in election cycle to attend. So it doesn't prohibit us from doing an event, but it does sort of indicate that it's a very unique time of the year in order for us to avoid campaign events.
Okay. We should probably get a motion on the table here, one way or the other.
I would say if the changes proposed are acceptable, and you can make a motion to that, I would say to direct staff to incorporate it into sort of the formal policy that we have, and then it'll come back for a final approval by resolution.
Okay. Someone want to make that motion? Or maybe you have a point to make. Go ahead, either way.
No, I was
A
making
quotient, okay.
motion.
All right, so a motion by Tom. Second by Amanda. Further comments, Amanda?
I just wanted to talk about the video idea, like social media, and you can do posts with photos or videos, and my immediate thought was like somebody like Frank Caruso would be great for this, but that's tough to do if we're not going to fund OCA Media. So I don't know if this is contingent on that, or if we're just going to use our cell phones to make videos about places that we're talking about. I mean, I think it's an interesting idea and I like it, but I just wanted to give that feedback that it'd be more professional and look like it's coming from the village more if it had a OCA Media doing those types of things. Anyway, and
Tom?
I had offered to do some of that video work for.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so, and I have the editing software and cameras that I could do that.
Oh, okay, good.
Lynn?
I'm sorry, are we separating the policy revisions and the video idea? Are we having all of that discussion right now?
Well, right now, sorry.
The only motion I have is for the actual policy changes.
Yes, right.
now.
We haven't touched on the other
Thank
item.
you. Is that your understanding, everybody?
We're on E.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
They're both
they're
listed together.
combined
You
in
weren't
E,
wrong.
so I'm not crazy, okay.
No,
No, and
You might be, but.
you can make you can complete the vote on this motion. You can continue your conversation on this matter.
Yeah, this is,
Okay,
yeah,
sorry,
all right, so,
for clarity.
this will be voting on to direct staff to incorporate changes to the village board outreach program. Everybody good?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Now we can discuss what's it called?
Social media.
The social media focus.
Social media, that's right, yeah.
I wanted to just explain this for someone who's watching. Amanda, I appreciate your comments. For someone watching who may not know exactly what we're talking about here, I've changed the proposal for the fall. We have 2 events; those have been approved. But we were going to do more of a social media focus in order to highlight some things about the village on that platform. So in order to avoid burden on village staff and the appearance of campaigning for village board members, I've tried to find sort of a happy medium where village board members will help record a video introducing people to an entity of the village. So in my memo, I made a example script for Phil, introducing us to the village hall, talking about when it's open, what you can do here, what these rooms look like. Sometimes that's really helpful for people who may not be around these spaces but want to understand what they look like or how to visit them. And I've put together a proposal of some options. I do agree that I think some of the video editing software would be great, but I also feel like there's a little bit of, we could do a little bit of both, sort of curated videos that have been edited and you know, really thought out, but then also sort of modern videos that are a little bit more appealing to somebody who's just trying to go through really quickly and potentially get a laugh. I don't know. We're not trying to make this light, but in some ways sort of making it accessible to all sorts of different viewers. Obviously, we've seen the police department have a lot of success in some of that style. And so whatever a village board trustee would be more comfortable with, we'd obviously work to make that fit. But that's sort of what we're proposing.
Okay.
Sorry, was that
No, it's
offensive?
good. No, it's fine. Thank you for not suggesting a dance video where we all.
No.
Yeah.
Non-TikTok real.
Yeah.
I like the idea of keeping it to public areas, though. Like, you know, these are things where people can go, like a behind the scenes tour of like the police department is
Not a good
you know,
idea.
like let's not. Well, I mean, I'm just saying, like it, I guess we'd have to think about it, but like, I mean, as fascinating as I think some people might find a tour of the water sewer treatment plant, like, you know, like, is that a good idea? Maybe not. We'll see. But like, I like where you're going with this. That's my feedback, and I'm open to different things.
Okay.
Well, to me, I envision too just getting to know staff more. So in addition, right, like yes, seeing places in Oregon community, but also, you know, being able to have a random fact about who the village staff are and get, like I said, getting to know them.
So where do we go from here? Do we want this further development? I guess we'd be directing Lynn to further develop the idea?
We could
No?
We could certainly do that. I have also talked to Martin a little bit about this, and he's kind of given me a time of the year where staff would be more available, which is a little bit further into the winter. So I wonder if we try village entities, the police department, a couple parks, see what kind of feedback we get, engagement we get, and if we feel like, okay, this is really worth some time and energy. You know, we've been doing events for the last couple of years. Maybe we shift a little bit to something new. I'd like to use
I'd like to avoid using staff time until we know that this is
Yeah.
interesting. I don't know, that it's well received.
Sure.
And then Paige, I love that idea of, maybe getting short snippets from the staff. But maybe first we start with this and see how well that goes.
It sounds like we could just do a pilot of some kind and see what kind of reception we get and how much effort it takes to, between you and
Sure.
anyone else and Tom's effort and see if it's worth the time.
Yeah.
So procedurally, I'm really not sure how to proceed.
I guess I would say a couple things. I think maybe a little bit more refined, like schedule would be helpful.
Okay.
I was just kind of talking back and forth with Candy. When we know that there's going to be 2 members of the board in a place and it's scheduled, we do a notice.
Okay.
And so, you kind of have a range of dates here.
Yep.
And so we would want to, if it's going to be, if Tom is behind the camera and maybe Lynn is producing it, and Phil is acting it, now you have 3, and
Okay.
we would definitely want to publicly notice that there's going to be a gathering of board members.
Okay.
So I guess that's where, kind of going back to my first point of schedule, we would want to define that a little bit better because there's going to be a little bit of administrative support on that.
In order to do that, can we at least nod that this is what we want to move ahead for, and then I can reach out and get a sense of dates that people are available and things like that? Is that appropriate?
Head nods, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, sounds like everyone's on board? At least, try a pilot program, see how it goes. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you, everyone. Item 9, new business, none. Item 10, reports of village officers, department heads, and consultants. A is a village administrator report. Questions or comments from Martin? B, finance director report, annual billing permits, impact fees, connection fees, collected ending August 2025. Elise is here if you have questions or comments. Item 11, announcements and miscellaneous business. Announcements, comments, communications, upcoming meetings and events, and miscellaneous business. Village board may provide brief statements, but no discussion of the action of the body occur. Can we start with department heads and staff? Anyone have an announcement?
Couple things.
Okay.
So reminder, this is on the calendar. We have the joint meeting with the towns and the Fire EMS District Commission next week on Wednesday, 24th, 6:30 p.m. here at Village Hall. And then I have a note in my head. We're having a Gary Dish neighborhood.
Yes, I believe it's the 23rd, so it would
Yeah.
be Tuesday after the Public Works Committee meeting at 6:30 to 8 o'clock.
Yeah, and so that's a neighborhood informational meeting about the Gary Dish Parks project, actually. And then on this calendar, I see there's on the 30th, there's a fire EMS concept meeting, 5 p.m. That, I believe, is now been rescheduled to November, if I'm not mistaken.
There's a fire EMS concepts meeting with just the commission.
Okay.
Then there's a November, another joint municipal meeting in November.
Okay.
And the explanation is that the commission is not ready, does not have enough, has not reached conclusions that we're prepared to present those at the September meeting. So we've scheduled a November meeting, so it's just not open-ended, but we hope to have something to present. Is that accurate, Tim?
Yes. So the September 30th meeting on the calendar here is not for the village board as a whole.
Correct.
But there
It's
will
just
be,
the
there
fire
will be.
Oh,
a-
yeah, it's not for the village board.
Yeah, but there will be a November meeting that
Yes.
the board is invited to.
Yep.
And that meeting on the 24th, the joint meeting is still on.
That's
That
still
is
on
still on.
because we
Okay.
need to approve the fire
Final budget.
district budget.
Got it.
So it'll be a short. We
Good
need a
one.
quorum, but, yeah. Okay, so, other, announcements from, department head staff. Okay, village board, announcements, Lynn.
Speaking of dates, tomorrow we had tentatively planned to plant the rain garden at the Oregon Youth Center, but we don't have water right now, and so we are rescheduling that. I'll send an email, Candy, to you as well so that you can re-notice this. But the plan right now is Monday, September 22nd at 3:30, if you are available to plant some plants. I am desperately keeping them alive. By desperately, I mean we're getting a little tight. Things are getting brown, but we're gonna do fine.
So it's
What time
rescheduled to the
what time did you
22nd?
say, Lynn?
Monday, September 22nd at 3:30 p.m.
3:30, okay. Thank you.
So we can arrive at the meeting all sweaty and covered in soil
And we have standards here now.
for our regular meeting, or public safety anyway.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else for announcements?
Oh, I was just gonna add, so the youth center is closed because of construction and this pipe bursting, so for those that were not aware, like my daughter who biked there, whoops. And then I just wanted to shout out Leanne, but she's not here, just as how awesome the Wicked movie was. There was probably, I'd say at least 75 people there, and it was cool to see people drove from other communities to ours to do this, which I thought was cool. Anyway, so I just wanted to shout her out and thank her, so.
Okay, anybody else? Amanda?
We still have committee openings. Even though transportation has more, there's still openings, and DEI has openings. Who else's committee has?
DI doesn't.
Oh, DEI does not?
No.
That's
No.
exciting.
No.
Okay. Transportation still needs help. Thank you.
Okay, also we have a notice of award for $125,000 federal grant from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention as of today for Oregon Cares Drug-Free Community Support Program. So, good for them. Future agenda items. Anyone? Seeing none. Item 12, items for discussion and/or possible action. East Lincoln Street Reconstruction Project, temporary limited easements. 1, this is open session, discussion and consideration of nominal payment parcel report and supporting sales study for 6 temporary limited easements required for the 2026 East Lincoln Street Reconstruction Project. We're looking for a motion on this?
So to start with, we should go over what this item is about, and Lauren
okay.
can kind of give us a summary.
Yeah.
Quick question, Martin, did they have the memo?
Yes, they do.
Okay, so they have read the memo, but it's not in the packet, perfect. So this is this is kind of the next step in the ongoing process that I know this board is well aware of regarding real estate on the East Lincoln Street project for next year. The Cliff Notes version is that when one is doing a construction project with federal funding, if you touch private property, you do need to acquire a temporary limited easement formally to be on that private property. And we have such funding for East Lincoln Street's reconstruction next year from Main Street all the way to South Perry Parkway. We did have quite a bit of private property impacts when we first assessed all of this project. We were able to get that down to 6 parcels that we simply could not work around, largely because there was actual sidewalk on private property that we need to be able to remove and move back into the right-of-way. So we've been working with Fred Gruber with Gruber Consulting to work through the real estate process. Fred has now come up with comparable costs for similar land sales in the area, and he has put together estimates of what the village might consider offering for each of these temporary limited easements. And these do need the board's approval for him to be able to proceed with sending out offers.
Okay.
So next would be to move to the.
Yep.
Close, thank you, okay. Just a little change in the formatting here, I think per statute or Larry or both. But in any event, we're looking for a motion, or, well, let me just say, the recommended motion is to convene in closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85 sub 1 sub E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, specifically to develop strategy for negotiating the acquisition of temporary limited easements from 6 property owners for the East Lincoln Street reconstruction project as discussing this matter in open session would likely harm the village's bargaining position. The properties are located at 404 North Main, 215 East Lincoln, 223 East Lincoln, 271 East Lincoln, 274 East Lincoln, and 406 North Oak. I would entertain a motion to that effect. Tim, and second by Tom. This is a roll call vote.
Kirchdorfer,
Yes.
Higgins.
Yes.
McDaniel.
Yes.
Knipfer,
Yes.
Van Campen.
Yes.
Peterson
Yes.
and Marks.
Yes, we are in closed session.